Hello everyone, I am Muhammad Abuzar and you are watching Zarmath, and today we are going to discuss laws of limits. In the previous video, I have discussed thoroughly what is limit of a function. If you want to watch it, then link is given in the description. So in that video we will discuss laws of limits. So before going to discuss laws of limits, I will just mention that please first subscribe to my channel, and if you have any question then let me know in the comment section. I will do my best to answer these questions. So let's move towards our topic. So first we will define the two functions, that let f of x and g of x be the two functions for which limit f of x means x approaches to a, f of x this is approaching to L, and limit x approaches to a, g of x this is approaching to M. This is the basic definition of limits. So first we have defined these two functions, f of x and g of x. So first law that we will discuss, this is the sum law for limits, and this law says that if there are two functions put together, let's say limit x approaches to a, f of x plus g of x. So these are the two functions, f of x and g of x, these are put together. So how you will solve it? You will apply limits separately on each of this function, just like limit x approaches to a, f of x plus limit x approaches to a, g of x. So when two or more functions put together and you have to evaluate limit on it, so you will just this is just the same thing as limit x approaches to a, f of x plus limit x approaches to a, g of x. You will just apply limits separately to each of this function. So now we solve examples for this. So let's say limit x approaches to 2, first function is x plus 1 and plus x plus 2. So this is our f of x and this is our g of x. So these are the two functions and we have to find limit of these two functions. So how we'll do it? We will I have earlier said that this is just the same thing as applying limit separately to each of this function. So we will just apply limit separately. X approaches to 2, x plus 1, so first on that function, plus limit x approaches to 2 for the second function as well. So this is limit x approaches to f of x plus g of x. So we have applied the limit separately on each function. So now what we will know then? So we will just plug in the value of this x into that function. X approaches to 2 means we are going to put x equals to 2 in that function. When we plug in the value of x in that function, that will result into 2 plus 1 plus also we will do the same in that function, 2 plus 2. So this is 2 plus 1 3 and this is 4. So final answer is 7. So this is the first law for limits, and I have also written the example of that. When two functions put together, you will just apply limits separately on each function. The example is written in front of you. So now we will move towards the second law, and that is difference law. That is difference law for limits. So this is very same just like the sum law, because for sum law we will use plus sign, and for the difference law this law states that when limit x approaches to a, when here we will also put together the two or more functions together but with the negative sign in between them. So this is just like this, and now when we will evaluate limit of it, so this is we will apply the same concept here, apply the limit separately to each of this function. So that will result into limit x approaches to a, f of x minus limit x approaches to a, g of x. So when these two functions put together with the negative sign means with their difference, so we will apply limits to each of it separately. So this I think there is no need for example of this because this is very same just like sum law. So when we subtract this, you will put the just negative sign in between them. So now we move towards our third law, and this is third law states constant multiple law. So for limits, so constant multiple law for limits. So sometimes while evaluating limits, there is a situation like this: limit x approaches to a c times f of x. So when there is a situation like this, limit x approaches to a c times f of x, so what we will do then, we will just pull out of c from this limit. So this will be equal to c. We have just pulled out limit c. C equals to c limit x approaches to a f of x. So what we have done here, we have just pulled c out of this limit, so that will become c limit x approaches to a, and then we will plug in the value of x in that function. For example, limit x approaches to 3, and we have 4 times x square. So now we will pull out 4 from this limit. So this will become, this is just like the same thing as limit x approaches to 3 x square. So we will just solve this portion of this question, leaving 4 as it. So this will be 4, and now plug in the value of x in that function. So that will be 3 square, 4 times 3 square 9, and 9 times 4 36. So this is the constant multiple law for limits. When there is a constant times some function, you will just pull that constant out of the limit and then solve a function for the limit. And the next law is for the limits is product law for limits. So this law says that when there are two functions, just like limit x approaches to a f of x times g of x, when two functions are in a product, so how you will evaluate limit of this type? So you will just again we will use the same concept, that we will apply limit separately to each of this function. So this will be limit x approaches to a f of x times limit x approaches to a g of x. So we will apply limits separately to each of this function. For example, we have limit x approaches to 1, x plus 1 into x square plus 2. So these are the two functions that are in product. So now we will use the product law for limits, and that says limit x approaches to 1, x plus 1 times limit x approaches to 1, x square plus 2. So just plug in the value of x in that function, that will result into 1 plus 1 times, also same concept here, 1 square plus 2, this is 2, 1 plus 2 3. So final answer will be 6. So this function is approaching, this function is approaching towards 6. So this is the product law of limits. Now our final law is this is the power law for limits, and this law says that limit x approaches to a f of x, and this has some power n. So we will evaluate it by taking the power of this entire limit. So this will become limit x approaches to a. So this is just the same thing as limit x approaches to f of x and the power of this entire function. So for example, we have limit x approaches to 1, x 5. So we will do the same thing as limit x approaches to 1, x, and the power of entire limit. Sorry, this is 5 So x approaches to 1 means we will plug in the value of x. So this is 1. So these are the some laws of limits. I hope you will understand this. So if you have any question, so you let me know in the comment section. Thank you.